Hey friends, how are ya? So this is week 1. Welcome to it. Happy Monday. We are talking about today our action plans. So I have linked somewhere in there the action plan worksheet from your workstations. So make sure you log in before you click it. I have actually given you the one for leaders. It's not the one for regular consultants. We're going to move on. Not really much of a difference, but you know, let's just be fancy, right? Let's just be fancy. So we're going to talk about our action plans. And for today, we are going to work on kind of going one step further with setting our why for Scentsy. Because sometimes when we think about just Scentsy and we start trying to think about why Scentsy, we think about things like, because I want to be a director, or because I really like the products, or because I want a big team. And we start thinking about things like that when we say why Scentsy. Or we start thinking about some short-term things like because I want to pay for a wedding, or because I want to pay for vacation, or because I want to earn a trip with Scentsy. And we start thinking about things like that, which those are amazing goals and those are fun things to do. But as we move our businesses from a little bit to a lot of bit, we have to start thinking about why we would keep going even when it was hard, or why would we keep going when we heard no 100,000 times? Why would we keep going if we didn't agree with a policy change Scentsy made? Or why would we keep going if our frontline rock star quit? Why would we keep going if 10 people in our organization went and joined another company? Why would we keep going, right? So setting your action plan as a leader is about discovering why you've partnered with Scentsy in the first place, hanging on tight to the truth about this business, this industry, the style of work we do, but then also remembering all of the crazy potential that this industry carries, and especially Scentsy, as we partner with Scentsy, what that does for our business, right? So what I want you guys to be thinking about is, what is your life why? Because we're going to tie the magnitude of the vehicle we're in with what we want out of life overall. And this is not Scentsy related. We're going to talk about, who are you? What makes you excited about your future? What are things not related to Scentsy that you want to accomplish? That's a really cool word. What are some things you want to accomplish, right? So we're going to think about your life, what your dream life would look like not related to Scentsy, right? So would you be a cosmetologist? Would you be getting your master's or your PhD? I'm so sorry. I know it's really itchy. What kinds of things do you dream about, right? Because it's okay to have Scentsy dreams, and we should definitely have our Scentsy dreams. But at some point, the desire to hit director isn't enough to hit director. The desire to have a team of 50 isn't enough to make us go get a team of 50. The desire to make $2,000 paychecks isn't enough for us to make more phone calls, or isn't enough for us to try a little harder every single day, right? But if we were able to marry what we want in the grand scheme of our entire lives with the vehicle we're driving in Scentsy and what we could actually use that for, it might carry us through further. If you have that really gut-wrenching, compelling why, it would carry you further. What are some things you want out of your life? Do you want to be able to give more generously? Do you want to be able to stay home with your babies for the rest of your life without ever wondering if you had to go back to work? Do you want to be able to go on more missions trips? Do you want to be able to have time to go back to college? Do you want to be able to I don't even know. Do you want to be able to live on a farm, but you currently live in an apartment, right? What kind of person do you see yourself being? Did you want to foster babies? Do you want to adopt more kids? Do you want to be able to pay off insane amounts of debt that will free you up to maybe let your husband not work so you guys could travel the world in a van? Like, what big, crazy things, if you had to sit down and say, my dream life would look like this, what does that look like for you? What's the craziest thing that you've ever even entertained in your head, but you said, not in this life? What is that? What's that one thing that you joke about wanting in your life, but you just don't think you could ever get there? Well, guess what? You can. It's just going to take a lot of work. So it's a matter of prioritizing what you really, really, really want in your life with what you want right now. It's making that more important than Netflix. It's making it more important than hanging out with friends sometimes. It's making it more important than some of the things we like to fill our days with and call ourselves busy by, right? And so it's really important to just capture and discover who you really want to be. My current big, like, what if I could picture my life? My first big was, I want to be able to afford Christmas. That was my thing when I started. That's what helped get me to lead and star. And then when I realized I could afford Christmas, I realized I had to start dreaming bigger, right? Because I'm not gonna keep working my business if all I want to do is afford Christmas, right? Because eventually the hard things aren't going to be worth Christmas. The people disappointing you and leaving your organization isn't going to be worth the amount of work it takes to build that business in the first place. It's not going to be enough for you to get to a higher title, lose an entire leg of your organization, and decide to wake up and rebuild it. Christmas isn't big enough for that, right? My next big was to stay at home with my son. So part of my big still is to be able to keep staying home, right? But in order for me to keep staying home, I have to get really, really aggressive about our debt, right? And so I make enough right now to stay home, but if I want to keep staying home, regardless of what this industry does and regardless of what the future holds for my business, and regardless of if something huge and crazy happens that tears my business in two and makes me rebuild, I have to have something bigger than that. And so I want to get out of debt so that I can move into a different phase of my business where I can start dreaming about what that can do for me. So if I'm going to think it's worth being completely shattered when somebody posts an article talking terrible things about Scentsy, if I'm not going to take that home with me at night, if I'm not going to let that stop me, I have to have a why that's bigger, right? If my front line is going to start spreading bad rumors about me and try to tear me down, what's going to keep me going past that? What's going to make me remember why I'm in Scentsy in the first place, why Scentsy is who I chose to partner with, and why it's worth getting out of bed, moving on, pressing the block button, and not worrying so much about what people say about me, right? What's going to be bigger? What's going to be big enough for me to keep doing that, right? And so for me, I want to volunteer more. I want to travel more. I want to be able to take my kids on really expensive trips so that they can see the world, right? I want to make sure that no matter what they decide to be when they grow up, I don't wince at the price tag of what that's going to cost to get them there. And I don't want to be the one that has to stop or make their dreams smaller because I didn't do what it took now to make it possible for them then, right? I don't want to blame myself because I chose 1,000 other things ahead of my business, and then 10 years later had nothing to really show for all that work I did, right? I want to make sure that my why is big enough now to where I have to put my business as a big, huge priority. And I put it as a huge priority because my why is such a huge priority for me. My kids are my biggest priority, which is why Scentsy has to be huge in my life. And a lot of people are like, but I don't have Scentsy as a priority because it takes away time from my kids. Okay. That's a completely different story, right? If you don't need the income from Scentsy, you're going to constantly think that you're putting Scentsy ahead of your kids. But if your alternative to Scentsy is working full-time outside the home, but that doesn't seem like putting that in front of your kids, you just have to learn to think about Scentsy differently, right? I can't stay home and not make money. That's not in my cards. That will never be a life I get to live. I will never not be allowed to work. So Scentsy for me was my way out of a full-time job where I spent every single day away from my kids to a full-time job where I get to see them and play with them and pause work to go kiss boo-boos and snuggle and watch movies, right? It became a lifestyle in which mommy got to still work and work a lot, but with my kids around and being able to take a day off seldomly, but once in a while, to just spend the whole day with them, but whenever I want to, right? Take a week off of vacation with no permission. Be home every single day. Take them to school every morning. Be there when they get off the bus or when I have to go pick them up, right? So Scentsy for me was my way to not have to be away from them. I didn't want somebody else raising my babies, right? But the alternative to that, if you have to work, is not being a stay-at-home mom, it's being a work-at-home mom. And we tend to get that confused. We tend to think that once we've gotten to the point in Scentsy where we get to quit our jobs, that we don't work anymore, right? Whereas honestly, a lot of times we're gonna work harder because it's more important to me to see my kids all day amidst my working than to send them off with somebody else all day and not really know or be in control of what's gonna happen to them, right? So you're not putting Scentsy in front of your kids or instead of your kids. It's how you get to be with them more because the alternative is working full-time out of the home. But if the alternative to Scentsy isn't working out of the home, the alternative for you is getting to stay at home and do nothing because your husband does make enough money, I can see where sometimes it does feel like you're putting Scentsy ahead of your kids because the alternative for you is putting nothing ahead of them, right? Whereas for me, the alternative for me is going back to work full-time away from them. And so Scentsy is never something I feel I'm putting instead of my kids because there's not a different alternative that lets me spend more time with them. So it's really important that if your alternative is a full-time job, that you fix your mindset about what it really looks like to work at home. But if your alternative to Scentsy is being able to stay at home and not make an income because your family makes enough, you have to decide if your why for working Scentsy is big enough to compel you. Because some of you got into Scentsy for some huge, huge whys, but sometimes you forget that those are still important. Your kids are so important, and I'm not saying they're not important, but things like if you were a stay-at-home mom, but the way you guys do make an income isn't enough for the extras or hasn't allowed you to put money aside for college or hasn't allowed you guys to take a family vacation in like 10 years, working your business isn't instead of your kids. It's for them. It's allowing you to give them a life that before Scentsy you couldn't have, right? So for me, even if my alternative was being able to be a stay-at-home mom and not work at all, we still wouldn't be living a life that compelled anyone to do more than the everyday, right? I'm not really a fan of just existing. Everybody has the option to just exist, but we get one shot at this life, right? And for me, it's very important to experience life while I'm living it. I want to be able to be a yes mom. So if my alternative was being a stay-at-home mom, but being on a really tight budget, I would still probably work my business so that I could say yes to going to the movies a bunch, right? Or yes to that crazy expensive hobby that my kid wants, like hockey or something ridiculous, right? So that I could say yes to maybe a kid who wants to drop out of school and pursue an acting career in LA. Like, that's expensive, that's time consuming. I'd say yes so that I could afford to make sure that they had every single thing possible for them. I would say yes to Scentsy so that my kids wouldn't have to get into insane college student debt like I did, right? I'd keep saying yes to Scentsy so that not today looks one way, but that the tomorrows for all my kids and my family look the way that I need them to look. And if your alternative to Scentsy is being a stay-at-home mom with a lot of expendable income, I can see why it's difficult for you to move forward in your business. I can see why it's difficult for you to choose Scentsy. But Scentsy works really, really well for those of us who don't have an option that's not going back to work full time. Or those of us who could be stay-at-home moms, but could not do anything above bills and groceries, right? And so it just depends on what you want. You have to decide what your life why is going to look like. You have to decide what 20 years from now you need to be true about your life to make sure that you, because even if you don't have kids, this is still important for you. Do you want to be where you're at right now for the rest of your life? Are you fine with what it looks like right now? Is this what you want for the rest of your life? If that's okay with you, then I can see why it's hard for you to work every day on your business, right? But if you can think and dream, and you have things in your life you've not accomplished yet, it's really important for you to realize the power of the vehicle you're driving right now with Scentsy. It's important for you to decide that your dreams are important enough to pursue, and that Scentsy is an amazing tool for you to help you get there, because it is. Because money is always a really good way to get somewhere, right? And Scentsy is an amazing vehicle in which you can make as much freaking money as you want. It's true. The only thing stopping you is what's in your head and how many times that you hear the word no and stop. Every single thing that's possible in your life starts with you making the decision to either get out of bed early, stay up a little later, hire an assistant if you need to. It is you choosing to work during the day instead of going to a bunch of play dates, or it's you choosing to work at night instead of Netflix and hanging out, right? It's you choosing to get up early in the morning instead of sleep. It's all of these things that move you forward to increase your income in order to better match the dreams that you have. Because a lot of times we forget the sheer power of what that $99 kit was able to have in our life. Like, we forget the unlimited potential that Scentsy has. Or we don't really work like we believe it. We don't work at a pace. We don't work with an urgency that matches what we truly believe about what Scentsy can do and about what we're worth in our futures, right? So it's really important for you to think of what your life why is. What's your big life why that has nothing to do with Scentsy? What's your why that's beyond, oh, I'm working hard because I want to hit director? Well, that's not a why that's going to compel you once you get there, right? I need you to think of what your compelling dream life why would be. Do you want to move abroad for like 5 months, right? Do you want to be able to go backpacking through South America, like for 3 months? But you can't do that because you got to go to work, right? Like, I know some people who they just want to go back to college, but they can't because they're working a 9 to 5, right? What's your big thing that you need to happen in order for your life to move forward, right? For you to live the life that you know is possible. I want you to be obsessed with that because you're worth having it. You only get one shot at life. So why in the world do we keep choosing things that don't really matter over what matters most because it's easier, right? So I want you to think of your life why. I need you to marry yourself to it. I need you to obsess over it. And I need you to remember that it's possible and that you're already sitting in the vehicle that's going to get you there. You just have to make a choice. You have to make a choice not to be stopped by anything. You have to make a choice to grow your brain, your mind, your skill set, your talents. You have to make a choice to make weak things strong. You have to make a choice to show up every single day. You have to decide it's worth it. And if we make action plans based on things that don't really matter, we're never going to take the action. So as we go into action planning and workshops, we have got to be obsessed with something bigger than what we have right now, bigger than what we could afford to accomplish with what we're doing right now, and something that only an industry like direct sales with an unlimited income potential is going to get us, right? So I want to hear what those are for you. I want you to write them down, right? So your challenge today is to think about what that's going to be. And then I want to know what you're going to do to obsess over it. How are you going to make sure that you believe it's possible, that you're willing to choose what you want right now for what you want most because of it, and do some things that help trigger memories like that for you. Like if you have to make like a dream board, make a dream board. If you need to write it down on a message board or make one of your letter boards or whatever, something that's right by where you're at every single day, I want you to do that. I want you to get it put down somewhere where you're going to see it every single day. And as you see it, it's going to remind you that it's not going to just happen on accident. It's not going to happen just because you're looking at it. It's going to happen when you marry your obsession with it with your willingness to do anything it takes to get it. So your challenge today is to think about what your biggest, craziest why is. How we can marry that with your Scentsy business is what we're going to do next. And, but yeah, I want to hear what those are. I want to hear what your biggest, craziest non-Scentsy dream is. Comment that below and then post some pictures about like how you're going to remind yourself of that constantly, even if it's putting it on like a letter board or a light box or making a dream board, whatever it takes for you to be able to see that constantly, right? So comment all of that below. Don't forget to tag your sponsor, your director, your upline, anybody that you can. If they're not in this group, add them. And then I want you to create like a group message with you and anyone in your upline so that they can help keep you accountable on Facebook. So comment below all of those things. Make sure you tag your sponsor and your upline in your posts. And then make sure you make a group message with them in it so that they can keep you accountable to what you're doing in this course. I'm super excited to get this started with you, but like every good thing starts is we got to figure out why we're doing it, right? So I want to hear what you have to say and what you're excited about, what your big, hairy, scary, crazy life dream is. Okay? Love you guys. Bye.